Hey, what's happening? This is Urshel and we're here for Urshel Speak, and we're live today, coming from the home studio once again. And I decided we're going to go ahead and just have the greatest conversation ever, because this is going to be the greatest show ever, greatest talk show ever, because we're here to do what? To be the right man at the right time, saying the right words to change the world. And I decided to title this show with a question, and the question is one that I don't think many of us have been asking, but this week, and with some of the things that I've personally been experiencing, the things that we're seeing, the things that are happening all over the news, I wanted to ask this question and have this conversation. Um, could 2020 be the best year that we've ever experienced? And when I say we, I say individually. You know, there have been some challenges for me. As some of you know, it started early in the year with a car accident that's pretty impactful for me. But since that time, other things have happened, and not a whole lot of complaints about how things have progressed during that time. But I'm speaking more collectively, not so much to my friends in Brazil or Irish John, if you're listening out there, although he loves America and American exceptionalism, but more so to those of us here in the great US of A, those of us in this great state of Texas, and really wanting to have this conversation and discuss this year, 2020, and is it a great year? I mean, we've experienced a lot. Economically, there's been challenges. Politically, there's upheaval. That doesn't seem new, but it does seem different. The entire world has dealt with the pandemic, and we've talked about that a little bit. And really, a whole lot of things we could look at and say, I just wish. I've seen a bunch of people post a meme that says, I want to ask my mom if that threat to smack me into next year still applies, because I'm ready to get out of here. And so, that's a little bit funny, but, that's really in some ways how people have felt with the things that have happened. And I've even said, I've stopped saying to people, hey, once everything clears up and gets back to normal, we'll do this or we'll do that, because, well, first of all, we don't know, what's going to happen next. I've seen tarantulas coming to Texas. They've talked about bees coming from Africa, so we don't know if there are any other things that may be perceived as negative that are on the way. But here's a couple of things that I do know. That it's absolutely up to me, it's absolutely up to us in every situation to determine how we deal with any adversity that comes our way. I remember watching a short conversation with Will Smith, and he was talking about some of the things in his past and growing up. And, he said, you're not responsible for what happened to you. You're not responsible for if someone abused you or hurt you, or someone took advantage of you or did something wrong. That's not your responsibility, but it is absolutely 100% your responsibility in how you deal with what happened to you, how you allow that to impact your life, your thought, your family, your relationships, and everything going forward. So when I asked this question about 2020, could this be a great year for America? Could this be the beginning of something amazing? And I've thought about this from a lot of different directions, as far as Mother Earth. I've even heard someone ask the question, maybe this is something that was needed, because during the time that the world was shut down, you couldn't see the air in Los Angeles. You could see the mountains in the Himalayas. People told me, didn't personally see that, but we were polluting our planet less. So there are things that people look at and say, well, what about this? Well, as a result of this that happened, I can tell you, for me personally, there are things that have happened in my life. Getting fired one time, caused a chain reaction of things. I was devastated. I was hurt. I felt taken advantage of. I felt, mistreated, misunderstood, whatever, every miss you can think of. And the truth is, as a result of that, it opened the door to some of the greatest opportunities that I had in my life. But I probably would not have chose those circumstances to move me to the next opportunities. And that's just kind of a reality. Sometimes uncomfortable things happen, and that becomes the catalyst to the next great thing or the series of great things happening. And so when I ask this question as it pertains to us as a nation, as American people, and we have what seems to be all of this crisis, divisiveness, political upheaval. I haven't been on the news or social media quite as much over the last few weeks, because again, I've been doing a lot of things to work on my body, a lot of things to work on my mind, and I've been having a lot of fun with that, and really kind of taking this opportunity to rehab, and really transforming that into an opportunity to recreate and to rebuild, kind of like, for those of you that are as old as I am, the $6 million man, say, we have the technology, we can build him and make him greater. And, our president, his campaign slogan was "Make America Great Again." And, and I've placed that thought and that mentality alongside something that maybe we'll take a look at. Maybe we'll read a little bit of it later, but it's a poem by the great American poet Langston Hughes. And there's some interesting thoughts there that, I think maybe we'll explore a little bit later in this conversation. But here's why I'm asking the question about how great 2020 potentially is. But of course, that's based on us. It's based on how we choose to respond. But what has 2020 done so far? What has been, I know we've had businesses closed and we've had all of these things happen, but have you taken any time, like I've been doing, to think about the opportunities that we have now because of the things that have happened, the things that we've been forced to deal with, that we would not have chosen? We would not have voted if being a democratic country, we wouldn't have said, you know what, here's how we want to map out the next 365 days. On December 31st, none of us would have voted for the circumstances that we see, but they're the ones we have. So the question is, what has happened as a result of that? And what's the opportunity that we have now? What is the situation, that the cards that we've been dealt? Where is the opportunity for the greatness to come out of us individually, locally? And as I started thinking about that question, I really started contemplating what are all the conversations that are happening now? What are the things that we're experiencing? Because our economy was shut down, people were quarantined at home, and again, if we would have had a discussion guessing about what would happen if we shut our economy down, we took all the kids out of school and we filled up hospitals. If we would have postulated on what the result of all of those things would have been, I think most of us would have been screaming a little bit more doomsday than what we've actually experienced. But this has provoked us to look at some things. And again, I don't care politically which side you lean to, or if you run hard to the left or hard to the right, because I still feel like you have to use your brain. I still feel like you have to be able to look at circumstances and begin to evaluate, really where we're at. And, the truth is, some things have been exposed, right? Some things have been revealed. And what do we think? Again, politically, swing to whatever side you want. But how do we feel as a nation about our healthcare system, the preparedness, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry? People, there's, as polarizing as the concept of Obamacare is for a lot of people. I don't particularly see that it has to be that polarizing, but I feel that way about most issues. But we have to look at our healthcare system. We have to look at our systems that we have in place to take care of our elderly people, because we've seen some failures there. And failure, this is really the one of the overreaching points. Failure is the opportunity for the next success. It's the opportunity for greatness. It points out that there's room for improvement. And let me say this. Let's just back up a little bit before we dissect some of these or get into some of these smaller issues. One of the repeated conversations or the things that we hear and that we say about America being the greatest nation that there is, the greatest nation in the world. There's no greater, country in the world. And, I don't have any beef or argument with that statement at all. I'm a Marine. I swore to defend this country. I've traveled. I've been to other places. I've been to, so many places that I've enjoyed and loved. And so I don't have any beef with that statement, except when we use that statement in a way that when someone is addressing an issue, when someone's addressing a problem, when someone's saying that something isn't right or something needs to change or something needs to be better. I'll tell you what I do take issue with, and I see this all the time. I hear it, I see it on social media. Or if you don't like it, leave, get out of the country. Go somewhere else. Go back where you came from. Go find you another country that'll let you this or let you that. And that's that's nonsense, right? And here's why. So let's say, for the sake of argument, let's put that aside and say we are the greatest nation. The question isn't whether we're the greatest nation in comparison to any other nation. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what metrics you use necessarily to come to that conclusion, because I would assume that there are people in other places who feel like where they live is the greatest place that you could ever live. Their loyalty, their commitment, their love for whether, I would assume that other people feel that way. And that's great. And they probably should. But the question isn't this competitive or this measuring mentality of saying we're greater than this place because they do this, or we're greater than that place, or our situation, our circumstances are better because of these things. The question isn't, are we better than anybody else? The question is, are we as good as we can be? Are we as great as we could be at this moment? And I'm not talking because I can hear it. I can hear the thoughts saying, well, nobody's perfect. No country's perfect. We've got our problems. That's not the issue. That's not the question. Today, right now, where we are we as good as we could be or should be at this moment? Have we grown? Have we progressed? So when we talk about it, issues of racism. And we talk, and I see this, I read it all the time. Yes, we had slavery, and yes, we had Jim Crow, but we've done so much good, and we've had the civil rights movement and all of these things. Great, all of that's true. All of that's true. Same thing. Walk down the path with our economy. Walk down that with equal rights, and walk down that with issues for women and all of these things. And it's great to say that we've made progress. But I'm not talking about being the skinniest fat man in the room. That's not the issue. If I was 500 pounds overweight, but now I'm 400 pounds overweight, then guess what? I have made laudable and commendable progress. I have lost 100 pounds. I've lost, a person from my body, but I'm still morbidly obese. I still am at risk for all-cause mortality. Every way that a person could die, I'm at greater risk for it because I'm 5'10" and I'm 400 pounds. Even though I was 500 pounds, it's great to say that I've made progress, but it would be foolish, unwise, unhealthy, and not a great long-term decision to say because I've lost 100 pounds, there's no reason for me to continue to do the things, to continue to push. The reality is if I go from 500 pounds to 400 pounds, then there are things that I could do at 400 pounds that I couldn't do when I was 500 pounds. There are exercises that I could do. There are things that I could change. There are places that I could go to actually make more improvement. So it's not the right thing at that time to say, you know what? Things are better than they were. So we should just pat ourselves on the back. That's great. Pat yourself on the back. You lost 100 pounds. And get up tomorrow morning and eat better and exercise more and do all the things that you need to do so that you can go from being morbidly obese and endangering your ability to live a full and healthy life to getting to a place where your life can thrive, where you can be healthy, where you can live out to not only life expectancy, but live a healthy life and live beyond life expectancy. That's the conversations that we need to be having. It's not about not making and having made progress. So when we look at the things that we've experienced in 2020, when we look at what's happening and what's going on, let's have these conversations. And when you have these conversations, again, don't be afraid to say, wow, it's great that in New York, when we had this pandemic and so many people were getting this disease and so many people were going into the hospital, it is great that we were able to respond the way that we did. It's great that as a nation and individual states, we were able to do some things to really mitigate what could have been so much worse, according to all of the experts. Now, there's a lot of experts out there that, when I say experts, they're experts by what they type on social media. It's not because they went to school or they're a biologist or a doctor or a chemist or any of these things. They just have expertise according to the authority that they have on their social media. But here's the thing. New York, our country, I think we did some good things in mitigating what could have been so much worse. But does that now give us an opportunity to take a look at if something like this happens again, or take a look at our nursing home system, take a look at our hospital, our medical professions, our pharmaceutical industries? Should we be in post-mortem, and maybe not the best word for that, but the after action of this circumstance, should we be continually evaluating how do we get better? And not just to prepare for the next pandemic. I mean, there's some disparities in the healthcare in our nation, and we saw that those things got exposed. And so it's an opportunity. That's what we have. To me, if we want to prove, if we want to have some type of comparison on how great we are, or whether we're great or whatever, then one of the things that shows greatness is when you've taken a punch, when you have been put down, when you've been hurt, when you've taken what seems to be an L, how you come back for that. So we can look at it in regards to our healthcare. What about our education system? I mean, 2020, I'm talking about why 2020 is a great year, potentially a great year for us based on how we respond to the challenges that we've experienced and the things that we've seen. I'm so proud of the teachers and the faculty where my kids go to school. They go to a great charter school here in Plano, Texas, Lone Star Language Academy. We love it. They just, did a great job reacting, responding, adjusting on the fly, making changes, trying this, trying that, setting up, classes in Zoom and having, my son, my daughter were able to have individual time with their teachers just to connect and talk, simply because they miss them, not just in the aspect of education, but because, they love their teachers, they love their school, they love their friends, and their faces would light up when they see them on the screen. And they kept making adjustments, and all the way through till the very last week, they were doing things to get better. And I think that that's amazing. I think it's great that within days and weeks, we were able to make adjustments and do something that no one would have thought that we would have had to do, shut down all of our schools in our nation. But then the question is, what did it expose with our education system? What did it expose with access to the internet and access to tools? And if, again, because we're still not talking about being the skinniest fat man in the room. We're not saying, well, we did a pretty good job and considering the circumstances. All my life, we've talked about being the greatest, about being the best. And what that means is consistently getting better, consistently moving forward. We can't, look back. And that's my challenge with some of the mentalities out there, looking back and saying the good old days. My dad and I, we used to love to watch All in the Family when I was a kid, and Archie and Edith, starting out, Boy, the way Glenn Miller played songs that made the hit parade. Guys like us, we had it made. Those were the days. And I think we've talked about this, the contrast of the most popular spinoff show from All in the Family, which, there was a few. There was Maude and I think one or two others. Yeah, Archie, had a show by himself. And, that there was the greatest one was the Jeffersons. And, there was a difference between the theme song for All in the Family. Those were the days. And then there was the Jeffersons, Moving On Up. And I often thought about the difference, even in the theme songs of those two shows. And one of them was saying, let's look back. And the other one was saying, we're excited about the future because we're making progress. We can't get stuck in the past. And we can't get too anxious about the future. The reality for us and the thing that we face now is, what do we do today? How do we deal with today based on the things that we've experienced, based on the things that we've seen, based on everything that's happened in 2020, the year that we should be seeing better, the year that our eyes should be open to some of the realities that we are faced with in our country. What decisions should we be making? How should we be looking at things? We should stop complaining about all the things that there are to complain about. And we should start taking action together. If you want to prove your patriotism, if you want to prove how much you love this country, if you want to prove how passionate you are. There's a cliche that says, be the change you want to see in the world, but you actually produce the change that you want to see. You produce the things that you want to see by expanding yourself in that. If you want to see more generosity in our nation, be more generous. If you want to see more intelligence, more understanding, more wisdom, all the things that we say that we want, we complain about other people not having it. We say that other people don't do this and other people don't do that. And we're the skinniest fat man because all we're doing is putting a measuring stick to make us feel good based on the status quo when we should be pushing for better. If you're tired of hearing people talk about this, if you're tired of hearing people whine about that, as I see all the time on Facebook, then what are you doing to change that? What are you doing to make it better? How are you manifesting the greatness that you believe that we are and that we should be? If you're spending an hour on social media complaining about people who are saying this and people who are talking about racism and people who are talking about the All right, I think we got audio back now. There we go. Am I good, Mark? Awesome. All right, so we're back. Hey, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Had to change the setup a little bit, but let's get right back into it. So if what we're doing is sitting around complaining about the things that we want to see, and we are not becoming individually, locally, within our churches or within our groups or wherever it is, we find ourselves having influence. If we're not becoming the things that we expect, the things that we want to see, the things that we're complaining about, if we're not individually being that, then what right do we have to really complain? Why don't we look at 2020 and the things that we're experiencing? Why don't we look at those things and really see the opportunity? Really see the opportunity that we have to prove what we say we believe about our nation, what we say we believe about ourselves, what we say we believe about this great state of Texas that we're so proud to be a part of. Why aren't we being so active in actually being better instead of being active in complaining and being frustrated and waiting to see whether the tarantulas or the bees or the sandstorm from the Sahara or what next is going to happen to us. I would rather us make a decision about what we're going to do next to change the world, to force the changes that we know that we need to see, that we want to see for our families. I've got kids from 25 to 6 years old. I'm always thinking about how I want the future and opportunities to be better. But that means nothing if all I do is think about it. It means nothing if I don't actually be a part of changing, creating the change, creating the opportunities. There's a part of what I feel like is the human default or a human defect. And we have to find this peace. I was going to say balance, but it's not a balance. We have to find this peace within us about creativity versus competition. And what I mean by that is there is a part of us that feels like we have to compete. This is where I feel like some of the challenges in our political ideology, this is where I feel like sometimes it hurts us. Because there's a point where there's creativity in thought, right? There's a point where we're trying to create something that is great, something that is better, something that is life-giving. And it's easy for that to switch over into this place where instead of having creative thought and trying to make something amazing, improve something, impact the way that we live, that we become married to our ideas or our ideology, our way of thinking or our way of doing things, so that anytime another thought comes, then now we feel like we have to defend this viewpoint, this mentality. And then it becomes competition. And we move out of the space of creativity and we move into a place of competitive thinking. And competition, you know, and I probably said thousands of times, competition is good for business. And in a lot of ways, it is. You know, you see CVS, Walgreens right across the street from each other. They're not mad. They're not blowing each other's businesses up. You know, they're not terrorizing each other. They recognize that there is enough market share and that there is going to be enough business just based on traffic patterns alone for both of those businesses to thrive. So there's no need of trying to keep the competition from being there. As a matter of fact, use the fact that there's two different approaches and traffic goes, you know, this way and that way, and people are going to work and then they're coming home depending on what they need, probably determines what they're going to buy at a certain time of day. And let's pay attention to all of these things and let's be better. Let's increase the market. And that is the mentality that we need to have when it comes to change, when it comes to ideas. Instead of automatically shutting down the thoughts, instead of automatically looking at an ideology that's different than ours, instead of shutting it down and saying that it's evil and demonizing things, or questioning a person's morality or their patriotism or any of these other things that we have going on right now and have had going on for some time. Instead of doing that, what if we, instead of engaging the competitive mind, what if we engage creatively and say, how can we think better? And I mean, I'll give you an example that, you know, that isn't going to feel good to all of us capitalists, right? You know, there's a, you know, we have a portion of our government or politicians that call themselves democratic socialists, right? And then we see, very clearly the delineation of thought and that type of thinking and ideology. And some of it, obviously it goes too far because again, we can't just look at anything on either side as far as just the merits of the thought. We have to point out everything that's bad about it. And so whatever you think, whatever you hold dear, as far as that ideology. But here's one thing I can say: we hit this pandemic. They shut down businesses, hotels. We had just been staying in a big, beautiful hotel downtown with a conference with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and then the next week, boom, everything's shut down. And the government says, what? We're going to send out stimulus checks. Through the SBA and through banks, we're going to do paycheck protection program, economic injury, disaster loans, things like that. It's a safety net. Those were social programs that we came up with. And to date, I don't know anyone. Now, I know some businesses, I heard of some businesses or companies. I personally, you can chime in, let me know if you do. I don't know anybody who got their stimulus check and said, you know what? I'm just going to send this back to the government. I don't want this. And I'm sure there are some people who probably donated it to charity or their churches or whatever the case may be. I'm positive that probably happened because I know the nature and the heart of some people. But what I didn't hear is people saying, you know what, I'm against any socialist policies or big government. So I don't want, a stimulus check. I'm not taking this. This is a hook to put in my mouth it's a slippery slope. People weren't saying that. People were taking that direct deposit. They were paying their bills. And that's a good thing. My point in that is not to defend socialism or a knock at capitalism or anything. My point is, why do we pretend that there's no merit in another creative thought instead of, even if we determine that 90% of this ideology is bad, why do we ignore the 10%? Why do we have to demonize and say, if we give any merit to this thought, as a matter of fact, maybe if I embrace that 10%, this 90% that I'm right takes me from 90 to 95. I'm 5% better because I gave full consideration to another creative thought instead of seeing it as competition and something to be defeated. Because if we see ourselves as one, we see ourselves as one nation. If we see ourselves as one humanity, if we see ourselves the way that we say we do, then why aren't we looking at the things that have happened in 2020 and saying, how do we get this to make us better? How do we get this? How do we take this circumstance and make a conscious decision to not be more divided, to not be satisfied with being the 400-pound guy that used to be 500 pounds, to say, you know what, we have an opportunity now in some areas where maybe we've identified that not only we could be, but we should be better. We should be having better conversations. We should be having better results. And now that this has been exposed, now that we've seen some things, now that our metal has been tested in an area that we would not have asked to be tested, we would not have chosen to be tested in these ways. But now that we have, now that we've seen some things, Now that some stuff has been exposed, do we want to get better? Do we want to just go back to a mental status quo that says, well, we don't need to deal with that. We don't need to talk about that. Let's just get past that. Yes, let's get past it. Let's get past it better. Let's get past it stronger. Let's engage our brains, our heart, our faith, everything that we have to improve what we say we love, especially those of us who are passionate and love our country, love our communities, love our children. Let's be passionate about change. And then the only way for us to do that is to be creative within ourselves. You find the problem that bothers you the most, and you become better in that area. All right, do that as a test. Find the thing out there that's irritating you the most about what's going on, and you become better. You become solution oriented. Act as if your life depends on it. Act as if your children and my children's future depended on you being better, me being better, us being better in those areas. I see people choosing to die on heels that don't make sense. I have someone that's a friend that I really like. I respect his brain, his intelligence, everything. He posted, listen, if you don't agree with me on this, if you don't agree that 99.9% of people recover from coronavirus, then unfriend me, right? Unfriend me, you're ignorant, I don't have time for it. If you don't agree. Why die on that hill? Why is that a hill that you would choose to sever relationships? That to me, that is saying, I am not willing to fight for greater. I'm willing to stay exactly where I am. I believe what I believe. Is kind of that Papa mentality. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. And yet, maybe he was saying that because that whole show was about getting kids to eat vegetables. But that's not a mentality that I want to be around people who subscribe to. I don't want to build my life around people who say, this is what I am, this is who I am, that's all that I am, and that's all that I'll ever be. Because if you have that mentality about you, you probably have that mentality about me. If you have that mentality about me, then you probably have that mentality about our society. So why don't we want greater? Why don't we look at everything that has happened in 2020 and say, thank God for the adversity that we face. Thank God for every challenge. Thank God for every controversy, everything that's come up this year. Thank God for it, because now we have the opportunity. We have been forced to have to see it, so we should confront it. And here's what I'm going to do about it to make it better. Pick your issue. Pick your challenge. Pick your thing that makes you angry. And say, this is how 2020 is going to make me better. As a human, as a husband, as a father, as a child, as an American, as a Texan, as a veteran, whatever it is, this is how I'm going to be better because of the things that I've seen this year. And as a result of me being better, by default, the environment gets better. The communities that I'm a part of get better because I am. And then we can challenge, change based on this great opportunity that 2020 has given us. 2020 has given us an opportunity to look ourselves more clearly, right in the eye, and say, I know what we think about ourselves. I know how we feel about ourselves. But what do we really see? What do we really see when we open our eyes? And it's okay. to lose 100 pounds. But let's get lean. Let's get mean. Let's get in the best shape of our lives. That's what I'm trying to do right now. At 50 years old, I'm trying to get into the best physical and mental shape of my life because a truck T-boned me on February 28th. I'm not just trying to get back to where I was. I'm not just trying to not be in pain. I am trying to get into the best physical and mental shape of my life. And that truck was the catalyst. I would have never asked for a woman in an F-150 to T-bone me in an intersection. But as a result of that, I'm becoming better every single day and I'm putting in the work. I think we should do the same. My name is Urshel Metcalf. This is a great conversation. I'd love to have more of it with you. I'm here every Tuesday, going to be throwing some other things out there. Man, if you find value in this, as my son would say, he's 6 and he's watched too many YouTube videos already, like and share, tell somebody else to check it out because this is only going to get better. It's going to be the greatest talk show ever. I've just decided that that's what we're going to do this year, is be the greatest conversation to move things forward because we're going to be thinking for change. My name is Urshel. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.